Alerted to an illegal use of implant chips, the trash can, which is a robot guard, was squeaking down the hall, scanning to precisely locate the source. It came to a sudden stop, rocking on its wheels in front of their cell. Jesse reached through the bars and touched its input jack. The machine froze with a clack midway through a turn and hummed as it processed what they fed it. Would the robot bite? Well, Jerome had turned off his chip because it was thinking endlessly about Jesse's plan, and all it came up with was an ugly model of the risks. You had to know when to go with intuition. Jerome was committed, and he was standing on the brink of link. The time was now, starting with Jesse. Jesse was operator of the group of linked people. He picked the order. First Eddie, the other end of the cell, to make sure about him, and then Jerome X, maybe because he had Jerome scoped for a refugee from the middle class, an anomaly here, and Jerome might try and raise the heat on his chip, maybe make a deal. Once they had him linked in, he was locked up. After Jerome, it'd be Bones and then Swish. They held hands so that the link signal transmitted from the chip using the electric field generated by the brain would be carried with optimum fidelity. He heard them exchange frequency designates, numbers strung like beads in the darkness, and heard the hiss of suddenly indrawn breaths as Jesse and Eddie linked in. And he heard, "Let's go, Jerome." Jerome's eyes had adjusted to the dark in the cell, the night giving up some of its buried light, and Jerome could just make a crude outline of Jerome's feature, of Jesse's features, like a charcoal rubbing from an Aztec carving. Jerome reached to the back of his own head, found the glue-tufted hairs that marked his flap, and pulled the skin away from the chip's jack unit. He tapped the chip. It didn't take. He tapped it again, and this time he felt the shift in his bioelectricity. He felt it hum between his teeth. Jerome's chip communicated with his brain via an interface of nanoprint-configured rhodopsin protein. The ribosomes borrowing neurohumoral transmitters from the brain's blood supply, reordering the transmitters so that they carried a programmed pattern of ion releases for transmission. It transmitted across synaptic gaps to the brain's neuronal dendrites. The chip using magnetic resonance holography to collate with brain-stored memories and psychological trends, declaiming to itself the mythology of the brain, reenacting on its silicon stage the legends of his subjective world history. Jerome closed his eyes and looked into the back of his eyelids. The digital readout was printed in luminous green across the darkness. He focused on the cursor, concentrated so it moved up to access. He subverbalized open frequency. The chip heard his practice subverbalization, and numbers appeared on the back of his eyelids. 6339121270. He read them out to the others, and they picked up his frequency, almost choking on the word, knowing what it would bring. He told the chip, "Open." It opened the link. He'd only done this once before. It was illegal. And he was secretly glad it was illegal because it scared him. They're holding the plateau back, his brain chip wholesaler had told him, because they're scared of what worldwide electronic telepathy might bring down on them. Like everyone will collate information, use it to see through the bastard's game, throw the ass bites out of office. Maybe that was the real reason. It was something the power brokers couldn't control, but there were other reasons. Reasons like a strikingly legitimate fear of people going mad. All Jerome and the others wanted was a sharing of processing capabilities, collaborative calculation, but the chips weren't designed to filter out the irrelevant input before it reached the user's cognition level. Before the chip had done its filtering, the two poles of the link, Jerome and Jesse, would each see the swarming hive of the other's total consciousness. would see how the other perceived themselves to be, and then objectively as they really were. He saw Jesse as a grid and as a holographic entity. He braced himself, and the holograph came at him, an abstract tarantula of computer-generated color and line, scrambling down over him. And for an instant it crouched in the seat of his consciousness. Jesse. Jesus Chaco. Jesse was a family man. He was a patriarch, a protector of his wife and 6 kids. 6 kids. And his widowed sister's 4 kids. And of the poor children of his barrio. He was a muddled painting of his father, who had fled the social forest fire of Mexico's civil war between the drug cartels and the government, spiriting his capital to Los Angeles, where he'd sewn it onto the black market. Jesse's father had been killed defending territory from the Russian-American mob. Jesse compromised with the mob to save his father's business and loathed himself for it. Jerome saw all of this. Jesse wanted to kill their bosses, had to work side by side with them, perceived his wife as a functional pet, an object of adoration who was the very apotheosis of her fixed role. To imagine her doing other than child rearing and keeping house would be to imagine the sun become a snowball to Jesse. The moon become a monkey. Jesse's family insistently clung to the old, outdated roles. That's what Jerome saw. And Jerome glimpsed Jesse's undersides. Jesus Chaco's self-image with its outsized penis and impossibly spreading shoulders. Sitting in a perfect and shining cherry automobile, always the newest and most luxurious model. The automotive throne from which he surveyed his kingdom. Jerome saw guns emerging from the grill of the car to splash Jesse's enemies apart with unceasing ammunition. It was a Robert Williams cartoon, capering at the heart of Jesse's unconscious. Jesse saw himself as Jerome saw him, the electronic mirrors reflecting one another, and Jesse cringed. Jerome saw himself then, reflected back from Jesse. He saw Jerome X on a video screen with lousy vertical hold, wobbling, trying to arrange its pixels firmly and losing them. A figure of mewling inconsequence. A brief flow of electrons that might diverge left or right like spray from a water hose depressed with the thumb. Raised in a high-security condo village, protected by cameras and computer signals, to private security thugs, raised in a media-windowed womb, with computers and vids and 1,000 varieties of video games, shaped by TV and fantasy rental. Sexuality imprinted by sneaking his parents' badly hidden cache of brain sex files. And in stations from around the world, seeing the same star faces appear on channel after channel, as the star's fame spread like a stain across the frequency bands. Seeing the star world self-crystallizing, the media figure coming into definition against the backdrop of media competition, becoming real in this electronic, collective unconscious. Becoming real himself in his own mind, simply because he'd appeared on a few thousand screens, through video tagging, trancer graffiti, grown up with a sense that media events were real and personal events were not. Anything that didn't happen on the internet, on television, on the grid, didn't happen. Even as he hated conventional programming, even as he regarded it as the cud of ruminants, still the grid and television and vids and internet defined his sense of personal unreality and left him unfinished. Jerome saw Jerome, perceiving himself unreal. Jerome, scanning a trancer, creating a presence via video graffiti, thinking he was doing it for reasons of radical statement, seeing now that he was doing it to make himself feel substantial, to superimpose himself on the media grid. And then Eddie's link was there. Eddie's computer model sliding down over Jerome like a mudslide. Eddie seeing himself as a legendary wanderer, a rebel, a homemade mystic. His fantasy parting to reveal an anal expulsive sociopath. A whiner perpetually scanning for someone to blame for his sour luck. Suddenly Bones tumbled onto the link. A complex worldview that was a sort of street-side sociobiology mitigated by a loyalty to friends. A mystical faith in brain chips and amphetamines. His underside, a masochistic dwarf. The troll of self-doubt, lacerating itself with guilt. And then swish! A woman with an unsightly growth. A penis. Errant glands that were like tumors in her. Something other people called testicles. Perpetually hungry for the means to dampen the pain of an infinite self-derision that mimicked her father's utter rejection of her. A mystical faith in synthetic morphine. Jerome mentally reeling with disorientation from this. Seeing the others as a network of distorted self-images, caricatures of grotesque ambitions. Beyond them, he glimpsed another realm through a break in the psychic clouds. The plateau. The whispering plane of brain chips linked on forbidden frequencies. An electronic haven for doing deals unseen by cops. A plateau and inconceivable risks, and always the potential for getting lost, for madness. A place roamed by the wolves of wetware. There was a siren quiver from that place, a soundless howling, pulling at them, drawing them in. Wolf lost pros, Bones said, maybe aloud or maybe through the chips. Translated from chip shorthand, those few syllables meant, stay away from the plateau or we get sucked into it, we lose our focus, concentrate on parallel processing function. Jerome looked behind his eyelids, sorted through the files. He moved the cursor down. Suddenly it was there, the group thinking capacity looming above them, a sentient skyscraper. They all felt a rush of megalomaniacal pleasure in identifying with it. A towering edifice of mind. 5 chips became one. They were ready. Jesse transmitted the bait. The robot froze with a clack midway through a turn.